In this video, I'm going to be going through how you can use assignments within Canvas. And what you're seeing right now is a completely blank course. So this is normally how most courses come whenever they're either generated or manually created within Canvas. I'm going to go to assignments by going over here on the left-hand side and clicking on assignments. Now, Canvas's navigation features make it really easy because in order to add anything, you should see a blue button over on the right hand side with plus and then whatever feature we're talking about. Since we're talking about assignments, it'll say plus assignment. When I click on that, that will then start my assignment. So I'm just going to name this test assignment 1. This content box is there so that you can add in directions or any other content. If you notice, I can embed a YouTube video directly into there, so if I need that as part of the assignment, it's a great location to go ahead and include that in there as content, so I don't have to include it separately and then send people to the assignment. Also, this V is going to be there for external tools, so it gives you the ability to embed different external tools. Now, some of these you'll find more helpful than others, but a lot of times for YouTube or even Hangouts Meet, a Google Meet, it works out good to use this within an assignment or within any of the different features of Canvas, whether it be a discussion or an announcement that has the same text editor. You can use these same features. So that's one of those things you can go through and play around with some of these things. I've personally used a lot of these to test them out, and they all work generally well when you're talking about an assignment or a discussion or an announcement. They all have the same feel to it. Now, moving on down to assignments, we'll just need to finish filling in all the information before we can do the assignment. And it's pretty straightforward. This assignment group, if it's a manually created course, you won't necessarily have to worry about it. If it's a teacher's course, the Sync with PowerSchool, these assignment groups will be imported in from PowerSchool, so you'll have to pick what category you want something to count. But that's typically something only classroom teachers would need to worry about. You can also have the display grade as either pass-fail, like the complete or incomplete, or a letter grade, or any of these, but typically speaking, points works just fine. Now, the submission types. I'm not going to get into the weeds too much on this because I'm going to do another video on external tools and submitting using an external tool. But generally speaking, if you just need students to send you either a file, a URL, or a text entry, leaving the submission type to online works just fine. And you can actually check multiple at any given time. You could check all of these. It doesn't really matter. But the one thing is, you'll need to understand exactly what your students will be submitting so that you don't leave out an option. So for instance, if you're sending students over to an external site to create either a Flipgrid or any of these other items, you can use a website URL and they can copy that URL over to Canvas and submit that. So these things actually do come in handy, but you need to know what you're assigning and how they're going to complete it before you just start checking boxes. Because if you don't check off that they can put in a website URL, then it won't allow them to do that. The other submission types, you can actually have it to where it's no submission, and that would mean this assignment is more or less information. Now, it's one of those things that if you plan on giving information, then I feel like maybe assignments isn't the best place to do information, but it's there in case you just wanted to put something as no submission. You also have the option to say it's going to be turned in on paper, which allows you to still do the grading and feedback within Canvas, but you're going to have a physical copy of that assignment, whether that be a project that's turned in or another type of submission that has to be on paper. And then external tool, and I'm going to do a separate video on this, it's something that's in there that actually is outside of Canvas but syncs in completely with Canvas. So that means the grading using an external tool or anything would sync in entirely. So we're going to go through that separately because it is a little bit of a lengthy process for that. Not that it's difficult, but really it needs a separate video for that. Now, going down, if it is a manually created course, the Sync to PowerTeacher Pro will not be turned on, but all others will. That is just so that assignments, when they're graded, you have the ability to sync them to PowerSchool. The moderated grading, typically that's not something that people would use, mainly because it's there for higher education, but for K-12, we just don't have that much of a need for an independent person to come in and review multiple submissions. So it's not one of those things that typically we use a lot. Now, these features are really important, the assign part. You have the ability to assign to everybody in the class, or you can click here and you can even assign it to individual students. So this allows you to assign to different groups or different sections, or even down to the student, to differentiate content. Now, for district administrators, that means you could have the one course, but then have different sections set up for elementary, middle, and high, and run one course, but still assign different things depending on grade level. A due date for PowerSchool courses, this is required. For everything else is suggested, because if you're doing something online, you need to make sure people know up front when it's going to be due, when is it expected to be done. And then available from and until. This means if I set an available from date, it will not be available for somebody to click on until that specific date. The until, after that date, somebody will not be able to get to it. I don't suggest using these, because especially if students are late doing work, or if somebody is just late submitting something, if it's past the until date, they will not be able to do the assignment. You know, Canvas will tell you exactly when things are submitted and when it's late. So I think it's best practice to leave that off unless it's absolutely necessary to turn that assignment off. Now, once you're finished with all of the settings, you hit save or save and publish. I prefer save and publish because then I know I don't have to worry about going back and publishing an assignment. If an assignment's not published, that means the student can't see it. And that's it. You now have an assignment in Canvas.